back, everybody. My name is Tim, and this is another Real Ideal Gear review. Today we're looking at the Zelos Hammerhead Frost. This is a watch I've had my eye on for months. I'm a nut for LUME. Full LUME dial is like crack cocaine to a LUME nut. I've never had crack, but this must be what it's like. So anyway, I've been wearing this watch now to work for a few days, and it's been performing very, very well. I've got some ideas on the strengths, weaknesses of the watch. A lot of strengths, few weaknesses. We'll get more into that when we do the actual review, but I'll show you some footage of me using it, which is the intent of this channel, is to show the applicability and the context within these watches. They can be used. So that's what we're going to do. We'll take a look at this and enjoy the rest of this review. Today we're looking at the Zelos Hammerhead Frost edition. This is a limited edition, as all the Zelos watches are, and so keep that in mind that when you see some of these watches online, they are very likely sold out as far as units on the web page. So this particular unit just sold out. I've been watching it for probably 3 to 4 months. I'd say 3 months for sure. So this watch was not a hotcake seller, as many of those watches on Zelos' website are as soon as they're released. So anyway, I got my hands on one, and let's go through the 5 things that I evaluate when it comes to a watch purchase, which are size, fitment, finish, accuracy, legibility, and LUME being the 5th category. So let's start off with size. It is an extra large watch. This is a 44 millimeter wide case. It's 13 millimeters tall. So when you look at the proportions, it's great proportions as far as the dive watch goes. But it is in the larger size of dive watches. So those of you with smaller wrists, you may want to, put up a cautionary flag here and maybe go take a look at one before you go out and buy one. Or look at a watch that has a 44 millimeter diameter case and 13 millimeters tall, just to get a feel for the proportions or the size of this. It is it's a somewhat tall watch, and one of the benefits to this, you're going to hear me say this with all these watch reviews, especially the taller watches, and that is you got to have a sapphire crystal with it because of the propensity for this watch to be scratched. This one does. So the sapphire piece is for the crystal is going to be doing a wonderful job keeping the scratches down on the crystal. Another benefit, I think, to this design is the crown positions at the 4 o'clock position. So you're not going to be adding even more width to the watch through the crown being at the 3 o'clock position. So it's been moved down to the 4 o'clock position. It's a little more the back of the hand friendly, if you know what I mean, when you're wearing a larger diameter watch like this one is. So those things all around the size, I think, are something to keep in consideration. I like the size of this watch. I think it does a great job when it comes down to the proportions on my wrist, and I actually like the larger watches anyway, so that's not an issue for me. Something for the strap, and we'll talk a little bit more about the fitment here in a second, but the strap is a 22 millimeter wide lug width, so keep that in mind when it comes to straps, and you'll hear more about that as we get to fitment. So overall size, large. It is a heavy watch as well as far as the weight of the watch, and that has to do with it being a brass case. And just to keep something in mind, that stainless steel runs about 0.286 pounds per cubic inch, which, okay, what's 0.286? Don't worry about that. As a measurement against what a stainless steel cubic inch weighs, brass weighs 0.310. So brass just on its own is a heavier material. So when you're looking at a brass watch, whether it's this watch or any other watch, brass watches are heavier just by density measurements. Okay, so fitment, it fits pretty good. The Zelos Hammerhead has the same Casio syndrome as all the Casios do, and that is the holes for the pin and buckle are too far apart, in my opinion. They could be a little bit closer together and give a little more refined fitment when you're putting the watch on with the strap. So I just scratch my head and just like, just get these holes a little bit closer together to allow for a better fit. I think the case is great as far as the fitment goes on the wrist. It doesn't seem to bother me. Again, above average size wrist. So I would just caution everybody that has the medium on up that you should be fine. If you're below a medium sized wrist, you may want to, take a quick look at another one. As far as the finish goes, this is a brass case and it's awesome. The this is the only brass cased watch that I have, and I'm looking forward to it because as brassy as it's looking right now, which I'm not a huge fan of just straight up brass. I like the patinaed brass. This case is going to patina, and it already is patinaing. I'll show you some quick videos here, and this is after just a few days of wearing it. The sweat and the acids on your skin and that are going to start to patina the case. So I'm looking forward to this case actually getting darker over time, which I think is a better look overall rather than this kind of rose gold kind of look. I'm not a huge fan of rose gold anyway. So the brass case, I'm really looking forward to it. The finish of the crystal is sapphire, and that goes well with a high-profile watch. So the scratches are minimized, at least the ones that stick around. You're not going to have quite as many. The case back design, I'm not a huge fan of what's on the back side of the watch because you don't really spend a lot of time looking at it. However, the embossing on the back is outstanding. Two hammerhead sharks on the back of the watch is fantastic. So it's a unique finish. It's a unique case design. I love the handset in here. The second hand being blue really goes well. There's a little bit of blue on the bezel from the 12 o'clock to the 3 o'clock position on the bezel. So that adds a little flair, a little touch of color, which is nice. It's not over the top. I think it works out just great. Accuracy. Let's talk about accuracy for a minute. And again, you're going to see some video of me wearing this watch on mower, and the mower is bouncing around and stuff like. You're going to see the watch move around, and part of this is the strap. I just can't quite get it to fit snug enough with the whole positioning on the strap. So there is going to be a little more bounce, a little more slop in this watch as I'm wearing this while I'm working, and that's a downside to it. But at the same time, the accuracy is great out of the box. It's very good. No change in the time grapher, and virtually no change after having worn it for several days for work. I mean, it's minor, and I just think some watches kind of settle in over time, and it'll be just fine. So accuracy is great, no worries there. Legibility and LUME, the contrast on this dial is outstanding. It's fantastic. You've got really dark black hour markers on the dial. Your handset is black with an outline in brass. Rose gold, brass, whatever the color is that outlines that center dark section on the hands. You have a blue second hand with also two little black squares at the very end of the second hand. The legibility of this dial is great. Even the bezel is great. You have the white markers on a black, it looks like a black insert on a brass bezel. So the brass, again, is going to darken up over time. So I think it's going to be closer and closer to that darker brass color, which is going to go well with the black strap and the black bezel. So I think overall that whole look is going to be more in line with each other. What about the LUME? Okay, so I'm a LUME nut, as you found in the intro, and LUME to me is, 30 of your day is in the dark. So if the 30 of your day or almost half of your day is in the dark, then LUME or lighting of some sort is going to be very important. So this being a Frost edition, the entire dial glows, and it does a great job. The bezel also has a LUME on it as well, so that glows at night. Does it last all night? Absolutely. And I actually think this is going to be a contender with the Cuda, the Signum Cuda, when it comes down to the overall brightness. I put the two together just recently, and I'll say this, that it's close. It's close. The Cuda may have it, but I think this is a very, very close contender for that. So you'll see this watch along with a handful of other watches for my full LUME dial showdown, and we're going to have that coming up here pretty soon, because full LUME dial to me is a fantastic feature, especially when you have the legibility down pat. Water resistance is 300 meters, so that gives the watch a really good water resistance rating. So when it comes down to lots of water exposure, no worries whatsoever. Screw-in crown, that helps as well. The bezel action is pretty good. It's it's got a good click to it. I think it's going to loosen up the more that I use it. I do use this bezel. I use the bezels on all my dive watches regularly during the work season, because I'm always timing things and keeping track of how efficient we're working in jobs, or if I have a special job, just how long the job takes. So I like the bezel. There's a lot of great contrast. The angular case, this is another piece to the watch that I love. It's the contrast between the angles of the case and obviously the circular dial. And so there's some real artistic contrast and you could say tension if you're of that artistic background. But it does create a little bit of that when it comes down to just the contrast of those two different geometric shapes. The LUME is great, legibility is great, sapphire crystal on a higher profile watch is very necessary, and it does have that. The handset is great. The bezel design in action is great. The crown itself is loomed, and you'll see a photo of that the crown, it's another added feature. I just love it. The case back design is great. So what are the dings on this watch? It's the holes on the strap. I just don't get it. That's one of the things that they send a strap, and the strap is pretty flexible. It's a little on the thick side if you ask me, but it also matches up with a heavier brass case too, so just keep that in mind. But the holes on the strap, just a little closer together, get one more hole in that set that they've already have engineered into the strap, and I think it would be that much more fine-tuned, or you could fine-tune it to your wrist. So that's something to keep in mind. Because of that, there's a little more slop when you're wearing this watch because it's a heavier case. So when you have a strap that doesn't quite fit right and you add that to a heavier case, which is brass, you're going to end up with more slop on your wrist when it comes to play. And so if I want to tighten this down, it's going to be really tight, uncomfortable, especially when you're working. And you got your arms and your hands are starting to swell up a little bit because you're just working. So it's one of those things that I wish they would, just a little bit more attention to the engineering on the strap would be great. And one other small thing is the date window is a little bit too small for my take. It just could be a little bit larger, easier to read, maybe a little bit bigger numbers on there if they could do that. I don't know if they can, but I wish they would be able to. And take out the entire 6 o'clock indice. Just take it out, put the date window in, and be done with it. Don't have a partial 6 o'clock indice. That drives me nuts. Whether they put the 6, the 3, take up the entire indice and be done. So overall, I'm looking forward to the patina on this watch, changing the look of this watch over time. It's great accuracy, great loom, very good legibility. The case design, I love the artistic design of the case. This goes along the same lines as the Samurai. I love the Samurai, and you just get these different angles to the case that I think really show off the watch, the design of the watch really well too. So it's a heavier watch, but I think overall this is a wonderful watch. It works really well for me for work. So I'm going to give it a 9.7 out of 10. It's a highly recommended watch to purchase if you find one online as a used watch. Have no fear on that. I think these are great watches, and you'll enjoy the look, the design, and if you have a brass case, you'll enjoy the changing of the case over time. So this is Tim. This has been another Real Ideal Gear review. Thank you for your time, and we'll catch you next time.